The name of our veteran being interviewed is Robert Langley. Mr. Langley was born on May 24, 1971. Mr. Langley served in the United States Army. He achieved the rank of an E4 specialist. This interview is being done in Davis, California on November 20th, 2014. The name of the interviewer is Avery Mooring. Avery is the second cousin of Mr. Langley. Also present are Julia Smart-Trucco, Alex Unger, and Kylie Peterson. This interview is being conducted for the Veterans History Project at the Library of Congress. Okay. Where and when were you born?
Lancaster, California, 1971.
What were your parents' occupations?
My dad worked for Department of Water Resources. My mom at that time was a stay-home mother. 3 boys.
Do you have any siblings?
I have 2 brothers, Richard James Paul Langley and Ronnie Langley, but Ronnie Langley died.
What were you doing before entering service?
I was in high school. I was a little senior just like you guys.
Are any of your other family members part of the military?
My mom's dad, my grandpa, Mario Matano, he was in the Air Force. And my Uncle Nelson. He was in the Air Force as well.
How did you enter service?
Well, I was a junior just like you guys. The senior year of the summer of my junior year, I was in Red Bluff, California, and there was, actually I was looking for jobs and it said U.S. Army recruiter. Red Bluff is a very small town, so I went up to the recruiter and he talked me into it. What talked me into it was they said that you join the Army for 2, 3, 4 years and it pays for your college. So I thought that was a great day. And at that time it was called MEP, Military Entry Program, where you can sign up your junior year and then your senior year, when you graduate from high school, you could join the Army.
How was your boot camp life?
Well, my senior year, the closer it came to me to graduate, and I was to me, I was a kid. I was 18. I had just turned 19. I graduated from high school. I joined the Army. The day I joined the Army was July 31st, 1990. 2 days later, Iraq invaded Kuwait. So when I was in boot camp, they said, prepare and get ready because we're going to Iraq. Now I, who only signed up for college, and I was very young, I didn't think it was going to happen. I heard about Vietnam, and that was the 60s and 70s, but at that time there wasn't really a war, so I did not think that was really going to happen. But we did basic training, military. I mean, my job, do you want to know what my job is? Yeah. So I was a 19 Delta Cavalry Scout. I keep jumping back and forth, but watch this. Before I actually went to boot camp, during the military entry program, you go to Oakland MEPS station. You go to there, and they tell you what you sign up for, right? And they give you 25 job opportunities that you qualify for. Because you have to take the ASVAB test, right? You take the ASVAB test, and then they give you 25 jobs that you qualify for. Now, I only had a high school degree. A lot of stuff that I qualified for was infantry. And my grandpa, who was in the military, he said, don't do any combat arms jobs. Don't do anything infantry. Don't do that because you could get hurt if you go to the war. So on the 25 jobs that I qualified for, infantry, military police, and there was like a tank driver, and there was a cavalry scout and all that stuff. Well, I saw military police, and I said in Oakland at that time, that's what I want to do. I want to be the military police, because I thought that would be awesome. But the recruiter at that time looked at my size. I was 5'6", 130 pounds, and he said I was too small, and he crossed it out the list. So I wasn't able to do that. So I looked, and there was this tank driver seemed pretty cool, but there was a Cavalry Scout, 19 Delta, 19D, 19 Delta, Cavalry Scout, and they showed all these pictures of this guy in a tank, but at that time it was really a Bradley fighting vehicle. And they showed him going over these hills and all that stuff. So that's what I said I wanted to be, a 19 Delta Cavalry Scout, where I can do that. So I told my grandpa, Maravantano, hey, I joined a 19 Delta Cavalry Scout, which is combat arms. Did you guys So he said, I told you not to join combat arms. Anyways, it was combat arms, but it was too late. So and then when it was time for me to go into basic training, I prepared to be a 19 Delta Cavalry Scout. The first 2 months is just basic training. You march, you learn how to march, formation, you learn how to shoot in that. And then at the next 2 months, you learn how to drive the Bradley fighting vehicle. That's what I did. It looks like a tank, but it's not. It's actually a scout vehicle. And a scout vehicle, do you guys know what a scout is? A scout is somebody who, they go out in front, they scout out the mission, and they report back to the big tanks or the infantry, and then they go and do that.
Were you given any nicknames while you were in boot camp?
Very good question. Yeah, my very first day that I was at the military, the drill sergeants, the whole thing is to take your, to tear you down and really give you discipline. That way when you go to war or in the Army, you are ready to go. They want to discipline you. They said, whenever you mess up, we're going to assign tasks to you. And I'm brand new. I'm a punk just like you guys. I'm in the Army when they assigned, when people are marching like robots, they're going toosh, toosh, toosh. Well, there was a crack in the sidewalk, and this guy tripped. And I, not really paying attention, thought it was funny and giggled. Well, the drill sergeants don't like that. You're not supposed to. And it was only one day into it. Anyways, they were all in my face, brushing their teeth with my teeth, yelling at me. And they gave me a job assignment called the Mudman. Are you guys familiar with what a Mudman is? That's when you make coffee for the drill sergeants. But before they actually gave me that task, I had to do push-ups and sit-ups, and they were double tag teaming me and that. So whenever they yell Mudman, everybody yells Mudman, Mudman, and then you run out and then you make the coffee. So I was the Mudman for my platoon.
Were the drill sergeants very mean or difficult to be with during the boot camp? They're normal like any other guys. You could tell that they were good people, but they were to discipline you, and they were hard on us, very hard. A lot of running, a lot of push-ups, a lot of staying up late, waking up early, a lot of yelling. But that's all part of the training process. Was it hard to learn all these skills?
No, actually, it wasn't too hard. I mean, they drill you over and over, marching and shooting, and that's all we did in basic training. And then later, you did the Bradley fighting vehicle.
Where was the location of the boot camp?
Fort Knox, Kentucky. Have you guys heard of Stripes, the movie with John Candy? Anyways, that was filmed in it was filmed in Fort Knox, Kentucky. And that's, I think, armored. It's an armored basic training.
How long were you in boot camp for?
2 months boot camp, and then 2 months, they called it, to actually specialize in my MOS, which is Military Occupation Specialty, and I was a 19 Delta. So I did 4 months altogether.
Where did you mainly serve during the Gulf War?
No, I was going to say after basic training, so I did 4 months. I was able to go home for 2 weeks. It was Thanksgiving. So I actually, July 31st to July, August, September, October, to like the end of October. Then 2 weeks I was able to go home. I had Thanksgiving, and then I actually flew to my unit in Ansbach, Germany. I was stationed, because after basic training, then they give you orders to where you're going, your unit. And I was part of 1-1 Cav, the 1st Armored Division of the 7th Corps. And that was in Ansbach, Germany. But at that time, my unit already went to Saudi Arabia. So I was there. They gave me my my military clothing and my bags and stuff like that. And then I was on the next plane to Saudi Arabia. Actually, it was really scary. For 19, I was really kind of scared. It was kind of fun at basic training. It was really fun to learn that and crawl in the mud and drive the tanks and that. But it was kind of scary. I still didn't believe it, but we were on our flight to Saudi Arabia, to Operation Desert Shield. At that time, it was called Operation Desert Shield. Iraq invaded Kuwait, and our mission was to liberate Kuwait. So I was on the flight to Saudi Arabia.
So you stated earlier that you were working in a tank-like vehicle. Could you tell us more about it?
Bradley Fighting Vehicle. It's a scout vehicle, an armored personnel carrier. It's not a tank, but you tell Iraqi soldiers that, it looks like a tank. Do you guys know what Bradley looks like? It doesn't have a cannon, which the M1 Abram has. It has a 25 millimeter, which is not a cannon, but it looks like it. And then it has tow missile mounted on that. And the scout vehicle holds 5 people. There's a tank driver, 2 loaders / observers in the back, Bradley commander, and the gunner.
How many people were on it, and did you make friends with them?
Yes. So I was 625. Each tank is named 625. There was 625. Did I say 625? Yes.
Yeah.
I think I was 626. Anyways, 625, 626, 627, 628, 629. And we all named our vehicle. Well, we were from Ansbach, Germany, which is Bavaria. So our tank, our Bradley, was called the Bavarian Battleac. And there were 5 members of the Bavarian Battleac. 625. I think it is 625. The 626. Bavarian Battleac, 626. There were 5 scout members. Me, Robbie. Then there was Slope. Slope was the driver. He was known because of his forehead that actually sloped. Smitty was the gunner. Sergeant Banks was the Bradley commander. And then, who I went to basic training with, Barber. So Barber and I, we were brand new. We were in the back. We were the observers / loaders. So we loaded the tow missiles. Now, because we were the lowest one in the totem pole, if something was to happen, now back then there was a big thing about Scud missiles, right? Gas, and that. I got to tell you, I was scared. They're talking about throwing all these gas at you, and this is what we learned in basic training. And they drilled this into our head over and over because they said people are going to die over gas. They're going to die. So we did a lot of our training with gas masks, right? The gas mask, and you got to suit up, and you gas, and you got to suit up in 30 seconds, or you're going to die. So if they had to send 2 people out, guess who they sent? They sent Barber and I, because we're the lowest ones, so they would send us out. Now, one thing about the Bradley fighting vehicle is it has a ramp that goes, and then we run out. So we were in the back. We were ready to go. I did drive during the day during the war because Slope needed to sleep. So he slept during the day. I drove. But at night, I was in the back. He was the better driver, so he drove at night.
Did you ever fear that of death when you were in the Bradley fighting vehicle?
Yes. There was a couple times that Scud missiles were actually launched. We had the Patriot missile. So the Scud missile was the one that was full of gas, but the Patriot missile would shoot down the Scud missiles. And we were alerted to mask up a few times, and that was obviously scary. Now, I don't remember the exact date, but when we actually went to war, a matter of fact, let me say this I can't remember, I want to say February 28th, 1990. I can't remember. President Bush, he said to Saddam Hussein, leave Kuwait or suffer the severe consequences. They gave a date, and if he didn't leave, we were going to bomb him. Well, that date, February 28th, I think, came and gone, and our Air Force just laid all these bombs all over Kuwait and Iraq. But when that happened, Iraq didn't fire at us. They fired at Israel? Israel, thank you. They didn't fire at us. They turned around and fired at Israel, which they wanted to create a holy war. Now, Israel did not fire back. But that's when the war started. So then it went from Operation Desert Shield, which is just the preventive measurement, to Operation Desert Storm, and that's when the war took off. And then you could hear the bombing from the Air Forces just... There's a map there. Anyway, so there was bombings. I mean, you could hear it all the time. And that's when reality started to set in that this wasn't a joke anymore. Well, it was, that it was real. And we moved out from the safe camps of Saudi Arabia. We were told to move out. So we were no longer part of this support unit where the mechanics and the cooks and a lot of the intelligence are. We actually moved towards Saudi Arabia into Iraq. And that's when I started to fear things. But I got to give credit to the Air Force because they bombed the crap out of everything that was Iraq. Tanks and equipment and bombs and all that stuff. They bombed them. Nights and days, it all went out. But here's the scariest that I was I was involved in a 4-day tank battle. Now, I was a scout in a Bradley fighting vehicle, but when you're in the desert and everything's flat, so the tanks were back here and we were here, and we were involved in a tank, in a battle. So there was days that went by that I was involved in the shooting of launching the TOW missiles and the 25 millimeter. That's when I feared for my life. During that time, I was involved in the backblast of the TOW missile, which had knocked me out, knocked me down, and I was concussed. And I was rushed to the MASH unit, the mobile hospital, where I actually, the brain shifts a little bit and it knocks the olfactory bulbs. So I can't smell. I don't have a sense of smell now because of the olfactory bulbs have been damaged because of that backblast of the tow missiles. And then later I'll talk about, after I get off, when I get out of the military, how that has affected me. So during that 4-day ground war, well, it was very scary. Matter of fact, shrapnel. Imagine this, you guys were in high school, and I was in high school, and the next thing I know, there is shrapnel shooting at me. That was very scary, yeah.
So we're reading a book called Jarhead, which I know Julia told you about. And in that book, the soldiers had to censor what they said to journalists. Did you ever have to do that?
Talk to a journal.
A journalist, like censor what you say about the war itself.
My interaction with the media was limited. I was combat arms, and there were limited times that I was actually with the support unit. There were many times during the media, a lot of times that is during interaction with support units, but before I actually was involved in combat, there were maybe some media crew where you could actually leave a message to loved ones over the radio, because it was around, at that time it was Christmas of 91. And then after the war, when we went back to Saudi Arabia, there was a media unit where there were some interviews, but I was not involved with that. But then afterwards, I got invited to some schools to talk to some kids as well.
How long were you in the hospital for with your injury?
So the backblast, I was involved in the backblast of 2 tow missiles. They went off. I was knocked down. They rushed me to the MASH unit. Actually, it's just a big tent in the middle of the desert, and there were some doctors there. I was only there for 2-3 hours. Then they sent me back to my troop, to my platoon. They checked to make sure everything was okay. There was a lot of ringing in the ears, and I have tinnitus, which is just constant buzzing from that. They said I didn't have to do guard duty for the night. The guard duty is when you wake up every 4 hours, and then you have an hour because this is how it is. There in our troop, we were Bravo troop. But in our platoon, there's 5 or 6 tanks. I think there's 5 tanks, and there's 5 tanks about a mile this way, and then there are another 5 tanks this way, and so what you do is you have two people each platoon on the ground, and then you have a gunner up. So a lot of people don't sleep. People in the turret of the tank, you look through that and you get the 25 millimeter and you look around. But then there's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 people on the ground, and then 20 people that are awake. I didn't have to do that. After I got hurt from the 2 tow missiles, I didn't have to do that for one night. So that was the best thing about that.
Were there other people injured during that same conflict?
Yeah, matter of fact, during the Bradley, remember the Bavarian Battle Act, there were 5 people. Slope, the driver, Barbara and I in the back. There was Smitty, the gunner, and our Bradley commander. His name was Sergeant Banks. One of the tracks went over a landmine, and it threw the track off of the tank. So those 5 members were divided amongst the other 5 tanks. His name, I forgot his name. But we got one more person that we shoved in the back of that. He actually went to Grenada. Grenada was another war. So here's the thing. When you go to wherever unit you're at, you get the patch right here. But if you go to war, you get the patch right here. Nobody had that unless they were Vietnam veterans, had the patches over here. This guy, who's the newest member of the Bavarian Battle Act, he had a patch on the right-hand side because he went to Grenada. And so there were 6 of us now. It has turned to a team of 6.
How much sleep would you get every night?
Good question. Now, being in that tank, you have to be suited up, ready to go to run out at any time. So where I was a 19-year-old punk, just like you guys, sleeping in my bed, I was in the tank and the Bradley fighting vehicle, with my boots and fully loaded with the M16 and the helmet, and you sleep against, and the seats, it's not made for comfort. It's made for war. We would sleep and lean against the so we slept, less than 5 hours. I would say 4 hours a night. If there was time during the day, you could sleep. During the war, during the 4-day ground war, one night we didn't sleep at all. And that's when the shrapnel was coming. And then when there was another guy that was wounded, people got wounded, grenade. Our main mission was to destroy equipment that the Air Force destroyed a lot of the tanks, a lot of the equipment. But the ground force was to eliminate any of the tanks that were still available, or if there was any equipment, we would destroy the equipment. And sometimes people got injured during that. Here's another thing: if we saw any Iraqi soldiers, we were to take their weapons, give them MREs, and point them south. Because south was the safe zone. Because here's our mission. If this is Iraq, Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Kuwait. So this is what we did. Safe was Saudi Arabia, then we went into Iraq, the Iraqi soldiers, and then into Kuwait to liberate Kuwait. And we were able to do that. In a short amount of time, we were able to do that. And the casualties were actually very minimal, and most of them were friendly fire. Most of them was friendly fire, so it was actually really short. I was only there for 6 months, November to May of 2000.
Did you ever see the enemy during the 4-day tank battle you described?
Oh, yes. Yeah, I could see them during that 4-day ground. Talk about scared. At night, you could see the tanks coming. You can actually see the soldiers there. And it is sad because, during the war, there's actually rules. The Geneva Code, there's rules. You actually cannot kill a person who does not have a weapon or equipment. But if they have equipment, then what was the question again?
Did you see the enemy during? Yeah. And
during that time, I was involved in the capturing of 11 POWs, 11 Iraqi soldiers, 2 AK-47s, but a lot of them were young kids. 17, there was only 2 AK-47s out of the 11. 9 did not have anything. And then there was another exchange, but there was another one where Iraqi soldiers would come and approach us. But what's neat is we got 2 Bradley fighting vehicles, and they got, they were just 11 soldiers. For example, that 11 Iraqi soldiers, 2 tanks. We got 4 people on the ground with weapons. Oh, and they sent me out. There's 11 soldiers. Langley, get out of there. Get out. So scout out. So Barbara and I, we go out. I go out with I had the M16 with the M203 grenade launcher. He had the M60 machine gun. And we went out there. There was 2 other guys, and then 2 tanks. They were all pointed. So, of course, obviously they're going to give up. But then we took their weapons and we sent them out.
What would happen if you killed an unarmed Iraqi soldier?
Well, the army or the military has some kind of rules, which I'm not too familiar with, Fort Leavenworth, where there's a jail system. if there is a killing that is not warranted, then you have to, then there's consequences. Most of the time, which I was surprised at that time. And, you watch all these movies and everybody's shooting that, but everything has to be accountable for, every bullet that I had, every magazine, everything's accounted for. So when we fired during that 4-day ground war, we would say 625, this is 626, request permission to fire an enemy. Then they do a confirmation to confirm it, then it's granted. Then that's when you are able to shoot. So you have to actually request permission to actually destroy something before you kill someone. But if it's life-threatening, then obviously can't. But unarmed women, children, unmilitary, then there's consequences. They go to the army or military jail. But there were, I didn't know of any.
Did you ever need to shoot your gun?
I was involved in the destroying of some vehicles. I did not actually shoot my gun at personnel, but but I was able to use the M203 grenade launcher to destroy a lot of the tanks that the Air Force was not able to destroy. So that actually was fun. You go like this and you pop it. But I did not use my gun specifically to destroy any personnel, but I was involved in the Bradley fighting vehicle with the Iraqi tanks. That was loud, the big tanks.
What were your emotions during combat?
Well, I was very scared, but I got to tell you this, one thing about the Army and the military, there's a slow brainwashing thing where you are trained and involved in wanting to be involved. There is a sense of pride. So I was very proud and honored to be able to serve, but at the same time, I was very scared. And especially taking the prisoners of war, you could see that there's families involved. You can see that they're humans. So there was some compassion as well. But I think for the most part, I was very, very scared.
How did you stay in touch with your family?
Letters, handwritten letters. So we're talking 1990, 1991. There was, they didn't have email and that. So letters. So I would do it 2 weeks later, I'd get a letter back. Now here it is, when you do it, somebody collects mail, then they go to the support unit. Support unit are like supply clerks and cooks and the fuel thing. They're not combat arms. So they're kind of away from combat. So the letter goes to them, then somehow it goes over, when it gets back it goes, and then they find us. I got to tell you, the best thing of that war was mail. After the war, we were able to go to these phone things. There was a big tent with some phones, and I was able to call, I think, once during that time. But for the most part, it was handwritten mail. Handwritten letters.
Did you ever have to censor what you wrote back to your family?
We were encouraged to actually not be too specific on what was happening or future events because of the strategy of the plan. However, I think I wrote whatever I thought went out. I was an E2, which is an enlisted man. I was a private. So I didn't know very much other than we were going north. They didn't tell us very much. fresh out of basic training. We were going north. So what I wrote in my letters, it wasn't too specific, other than we're going north in Iraq and I'm scared.
Did you ever have any free time to relax?
After the war and we went back to the support unit in Saudi Arabia, there was a drawing where one member of each troop, now the troop could consist of 120 people. 2 people were picked for R&R, rest and relaxation. And there was a cruise ship that was not traveling, but it was just docked there. So after the war, 2 people per troop was able to be picked to go to this R&R trip on a cruise at the at Bavaria? No, Bavaria. Bahrain. 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 And I won. Me and this other guy, I forgot his name. So I was able to go on a 3-day cruise, and man, the best thing about that was food. Because you eat meals ready to eat, especially during combat, meals ready to eat. They're just dehydrated food that you add water to. Oh, wait. But you were able to eat, I was able to shower, and I was able to sleep in the bed. So that was the best rest that I was able to do for 6 months.
So it sounds like you weren't ever expecting to go into war because you joined the service to get money for college.
My plan was to do 3 years in the Army, go to school, and that was it. I had no idea that I would be going to war. I wanted to go to Germany in the Army, and I wanted to get out and go to school because I had heard that they would pay for your college. And I had no idea that I would be in a war.
What were your feelings when you knew you were going to be heading off to war?
First, I didn't think it was real. I did not think that it was really going to happen. I still did not think it was happening. Even when I flew on that airplane to Saudi Arabia, I didn't think it was. When it hit me that it was real was during the bombing of Operation Desert Storm. And when the shrapnel started to hit our tank, that's when I realized that it was real.
What did you believe, or did you believe in what you were doing in the war, what the U.S. was doing in the war?
I did believe in it, and like I say, I honestly believe that there is some conditioning and some brainwashing where you honestly believe that what you're doing is good, and I did support it. The mission, the mission of that Operation Desert Storm was to liberate Kuwait. And that's what President Bush said we were going to do, and that's exactly what we did. We liberated Kuwait, and then we came home. So I believed in that. I thought it was something that the President said he wanted to do, and that we did that.
So I'm actually going to pause it.
So what was it like also seeing other tanks along with your tank in battle or in the war?
A lot of the battle was done at night, and I got to tell you, there's like 100 tanks, and when you're in the turret is the inside of the tank or the Bradley fighting vehicle. We have this chart of friendly tanks and enemy tanks, and I got to tell you, they look the same. So at night, when you have all these tanks at you, it's hard to determine what are friendly tanks and what are enemy tanks. And a matter of fact, a lot of the injuries were done by friendly fire. And I can see why. And they made a movie about it with Denzel Washington where they accidentally shoot the wrong tank. And that actually happened where they shoot the wrong tank because all the tanks look very similar. It's if you look at the Bradley fighting vehicle and the M1 Abram, it's very different, but to somebody who really doesn't know, it looks like two tanks. So the Bradley Fighting Vehicle is really considered a track, not a tank. And the M1 Abram is the Cadillac of all tanks for the U.S. Military. But to the untrained eye, it looks the same. So that's what it looked like.
Did your Bradley vehicle ever get shot at?
We were shot out, but the Iraqi tanks are not as good as ours. They would shoot and land short. Our Bradley Fighting Vehicle, which isn't even a tank, would actually go further with the tow missiles and destroy their tanks. But shrapnel, and I have some at home, I have some shrapnel that actually dug into the side of our tank. That's when I knew it was real. The next morning when there's all this shrapnel that hit. So infantry that's out on the that's dangerous. And even being in the Bradley Fighting Vehicle or a tank is very dangerous because they say when another tank hits it, it hits it, it sucks you out of that tank and it blows up. So that was nervous. I actually wasn't sure if I would rather be infantry on the ground or in the tank because a tank is kind of a big open target.
Did the lack of sleep and nutrition ever affect you or other scouts?
Good question. When we were in the support unit, you have hot meals and you have 3 meals and you have water and you could use the bathroom. But when Operation Desert Shield went to Operation Desert Storm, we moved off and we were limited to 2 MREs a day per soldier. So you had 2 MREs, and if you see the MREs, they're just small meals that are food that is sucked up in like a vacuum, and it's and you're limited on water and you're limited on sleep. So I think between the lack of sleep and the food, but also dirty. Months went by we didn't even change our socks, and I've never been so dirty. It was so much dust all over the place. I think it affected morale. Luckily, this was a very short, even though we were out there for a few months, the entire time I was there, like I say, I was there from November to 6. So if it was over a matter of a year, I can see it taking the toll on the soldiers.
Would you still enlist if you knew you would be drafted?
Would I still enlist?
Yeah.
Knowing that? Well, I think drafted is when would I still enlist today?
Yeah.
That's very, very iffy. I have 2 boys. They're 16 and 17. I got to tell you, the military is a great way to grow up. When I went in, I was a goofy little kid. Now, I'm the man that I am today because of the military. So I will say I am iffy about it. So I go back and forth. I would love to see my kids go into it because the military really does take care of you. It's a great way to grow up, and they take care of you. But at the same time, it was a scary, difficult time. If I was to do it again, I would go back as an officer and probably a support unit. I've often said that I wish I would have done 20 years in the Army, but within the last couple years, I have not thought of that. So if I was to redo it, I would go in as an officer and a support unit. So my kids, even though I go back and forth. I don't know if I want my kids to do it. Maybe as an officer.
When you first went into the Army, did you take any personal items with you?
They give you a list on what you should take. Tennis shoes, watch. But other than that, they give you everything else. You could only take so much stuff. Uncle Nelson bought me a pen. Uncle Nelson bought me a pen and a pencil set. I took that. I don't think I ever used it though. But no, that was pretty pretty much it. But then after the war, I came back, then you could take some other stuff. But it was very limited on what you could do because I was an enlisted man. I was in the barracks.
Where were you when the war ended?
Well, when the war was ended, I remember I was in Kuwait at that time because we went from Saudi Arabia into Iraq, liberated Kuwait, and then there was, and I remember them saying the war has ended. The war has ended, and then I have a picture like this. Then we gathered everything. We drove the Bradleys back to Saudi Arabia, and then we were preparing to go home.
Was it hard to adjust to normal life after?
Well, I will tell you this. After Operation Desert Storm, we went to. President Clinton was the president at that time. There was a lot of closing of military bases and forts. So I actually went to a couple other forts, and then I went to Fort Irwin. But then after the military, Operation Desert Storm was a traumatic event. It was a life-changing event for me. And there was a lot of reminders. Fans, the fans that go by? I think of helicopters, certain noises, 4th of July. There's reminders that went by. Sometimes those reminders could make me feel uncomfortable because reliving that event, you kind of feel different as if you're reliving that. So I put a lot of my stuff up to prevent from remembering that. Another one was the national anthem. A lot of reminders, and I used to think that was just something, it was a remember, but so I tried to forget and I tried to avoid looking that. But then there's always those reminders. What was the question again?
Was it hard to adjust to normal life after?
Well, then I went to college. So even though there were certain reminders, I went to college. I met my future wife at that time. So it was nice to be able to go to college, but I still had reminders that were there.
Did you see any of the damage and destruction done to Kuwait?
Oh, yeah. Well, in Kuwait?
Yeah.
One thing about Kuwait was a lot of bombings, a lot of smoke. Matter of fact, I can't believe I haven't talked. The whole time, the whole thing was fires and smokes. It was smoke all over the place. I mean, it looked like it was a raining, cloudy day, but it was just smoke. Yeah, there were oil burning, and so there was a lot of things that was destroyed during Operation Desert Storm, and yeah, we drove in that for days. Matter of fact, and then there was some depleted uranium, and that's one thing that, now there's issues that show up with the health from being in that smoke. Smoke and, yeah.
Do you miss the war in some way?
Well, now that I'm out, I'm anosmic, which means I can't smell. I can't smell anything, but I do have phantom smells. Similar to somebody who doesn't have a leg, they have, and it feels like they're want to itch or scratch. Have you guys heard of phantom they want to scratch even though they don't have a leg. I have phantom smells, also known as phantosmia. Those phantom smells that I smell are fuel and smoke. Those are reminders that I have today that really it isn't pleasant. The only thing that I enjoy about it is the benefits that the VA and the military takes care of me, because they do take care of me, and I'll tell you one thing. CalVet? You've heard of the VA? CalVet pays for my kids' tuition, college tuition. It's called the CalVet College Waiver Program. So they're able to go to anything in the CSU system or the UC system or a junior college in California, and they will pay for it. It's the way CalVet thanks veterans for serving, and they pay for that. That's what I'm thankful for when it comes to Operation Desert Storm. I get a VA pension because I suffer from combat PTSD, TBI, which is traumatic brain injury, and tinnitus, but also I'm anosmic and I have phantosmia about that. I'm grateful for that the VA takes care of that.
How did you and your fellow soldiers view Saddam Hussein?
I didn't know who Saddam Hussein was when I was in high school. The first time I ever heard of it was when I was in the military. July 31st, I was in basic training. They said Iraq invaded Kuwait, and Saddam Hussein was the leader. So to us, we just viewed him as the bad guy. We viewed him as the bad guy. I didn't know anything other than that he was the bad person that that invaded Kuwait. So being in the military, there's certain beliefs and that. So a lot of the soldiers, the whole plan was we were angry at Saddam Hussein for doing this to Kuwait, and we were here. The military was held. And if you ever watch videos of President Bush, he used to refer to Saddam Hussein as Saddam Hussein. Have you guys watched the video? He'll say Saddam Hussein. Yes.
How did PTSD affect you and your family?
Well, PTSD, combat PTSD, it's post-traumatic stress disorder. It's when there's a traumatic event, hence Persian Gulf War, the tank battles that I experienced, that when I experience certain things in day-to-day life, there's a reaction to it. It's a reaction. So I do tend to, I got in trouble before. I have reacted. They describe that, my therapist describes it as blackout rages, which has got me in trouble before. And I just recently, I just recently realized that there was help. I wish there was some kind of support when I first got out of the military, because I didn't really know what was going on. But now, within the last 5 years, I'm able to go through Mather VA They have prolonged exposure therapy, where you relive that event, even though it can be stressful during that trauma. You relive that to eventually provide closure. Because a lot of times I will stuff that or shelve my emotions during that. So I work with the VA today to help with that. So I have gotten into trouble because of some triggering from. Oh, here's another thing: is because I smell it. I used to go to sleep and I would hear the fan, and that would remind me of helicopters. Or if I sleep and I hear a loud noise, it makes me think of the tanks or the bombing or the TOW missiles. I smell things. I smell fuel and smoke that trigger certain events now. Like when I'm smoking, when I'm dreaming, and now I'm not really smelling these. These are phantom smells, which is, it reminds me of certain events. Yeah.
You seem very able to talk about your experiences openly. Why are you able to do this?
Prolonged exposure therapy, and that's because of the VA. The Mather VA. The VA has been very helpful in helping me talk about the traumatic event. Actually, if you would have asked me this about 6, 7, 8 years ago, I probably would have declined. But because of traumatic treatment, traumatic therapy, it really has helped me to express this. Matter of fact, I did not talk about this much there, but now, and because of this, it's nice to be able to help other people, because I don't remember having this when I first got. No, I didn't really know what combat PTSD was, but now a lot of people coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan that have the very similar stuff that I have. They have combat PTSD. A lot of battery charges, and Sacramento County actually has Sacramento County Veterans Treatment Court, where those that are coming back from the war that have gotten in trouble are able to, instead of going to jail, they plead guilty, and they are able to work with the VA, with the Sacramento County public defender, the DA, and the mentor. So I'm a mentor. It's a 12 to 18-month program where they're able to, instead of going to jail, they go through traumatic therapy, and they work with the with the probation department to be able to, instead of going to jail, they're able to do that. And that's what I do now. I volunteer as a mentor to be their friend while they're in this court, because I was in the exact same boat they were, and I kind of did it alone. So it's nice, and that's what I do now. And I was not able to do that, let's say, 10 years ago when I was not part of the VA.
When did you start going to therapy for this?
2008, so 6 years ago. So about 6 years ago, I went, and that's when I was really starting to have problems with some smells. And like I say, some of the smells I have are smoke, fuel, decomposing body, and bowel movement. And that was very disturbing to me. And because of those smells, it was very disturbing, and I wasn't sure what was going on. So I went to the VA, who then recommended the PTSD side of it. that was able to give me some prevention. Now I still smell things, but there's cognitive behavior therapy, which is a way to work with living with those memories, that it's not the end of the world, that you're just able to to live through it. So instead of being reactive, I try to work on it. But yeah.
What is prolonged exposure therapy?
Prolonged exposure therapy is where you relive the traumatic event over and over and over, and you work with those. So some of the thing is vivo therapy, where you live that event. For example, some of the stuff I have is the Bradley fighting vehicle is very small. I don't know if you see. There were some guys that were in the military for 20 years that were in the Bradley fighting vehicles, and they said they never saw a Bradley fighting vehicle loaded with all the tow missiles and the 25 millimeter, all the ammo that was in that tank. They never seen it fully loaded with live ammunition like that. When that is fully loaded and you have 3 soldiers back there, it's very cramped. So one thing that prolonged exposure therapy does, you're exposed to the therapy that you are feeling uncomfortable with. And some of the stuff I felt uncomfortable with was tight spaces, people behind me, and loud noises. And we worked on that. So some of the therapy that I would go I would actually be in a small closet for a small amount of time. Now, and they measure your how you're feeling. They call it SUDS or something. What it is it's a level on how you're feeling. And if I was in a closet before, I would feel a certain level of anxiety and stress. But if you're in that closet or you hear loud noises, you know you're not going to die, and that eventually, I can't remember if it was a 10 system or a 100 system, but if it was up to 90 at one time, nothing's going to happen. It's going to bring it down to 70 or 50. So that would be part of the treatment, is reliving it over and over until it becomes the norm.
Do you still sometimes struggle with these fears and discomforts? Yes,
as a matter of fact, I don't know if you noticed, I just put my hand on my chest because my heart does feel a little uncomfortable when it comes to, no, I know nothing's going to happen. I know nothing's going to happen. But it is still that anxiety and that fear and that stress of being in that small Bradley fighting vehicle and knowing that there were other missiles there. And yeah, I still am challenged with that today.
I know you talked about some of your being a part of a veterans organization. Could you go into more detail about what you do?
Yes, Veterans Treatment Court, Sacramento County. It's nice. I just got my veteran. He did 3 tours in Iraq and Afghanistan. He had some problem with anger as well. He's been charged. He pleaded guilty with the understanding that he would complete therapy with the VA, work with the probation officer, and have a mentor. And that's what I am. I'm just a friend. I remind him of his court date. He has to go to court every 2 weeks. So I work for the county now, but I will take time off every 2 weeks to just accompany him and be his friend in that time of need. And I got to tell you, it can be challenging, but it's very rewarding at the same time. It's rewarding to be able to help someone who served in combat. He was artillery. He was artillery. So it's nice. Actually, I was with him today, and that's why I'm late today. And it actually is a good feeling to be in the same boat with somebody who suffers from the same, who was in combat, suffers from combat PTSD, and got in trouble with the court system, and that that he goes through this and he's not alone. And he's not the only one. There's 10, 15 other veterans who are in the Veterans Treatment Court, 10, 15 other mentors. So everybody gets together and it's a support system, and it's very nice.
When did you know you wanted to work with the VA?
Well, I put it off for many years. I put it off. But not only did I put it off, I really didn't know I even qualified for the VA. Not everyone has VA benefits. But I had heard, so it was about 10 years ago that somebody said that because I was in Operation Desert Storm, that I'm able to go there for medical stuff. But I did not have a service-connected disability at that time. But they still would take me if I needed something. I paid a co-payment and then they saw me. Not every soldier can do that. But then when I started having difficulties with certain smells, I went there 2008, I think, to see if they could help with some of these problems that I have. I'm now service connected, which means that I do get a VA compensation. And I can go there and everything's covered. Matter of fact, last February I fell out of a tree and broke a couple broke a couple ribs, and the VA took care of me. I got to tell you, I've never been in the hospital, and the VA was very nice to me, very respectful, and they covered everything. They covered everything. I never got a bill, so that is very nice of them.
Have your friends and family been able to support you in dealing with / healing from your experiences?
When I first came back, and I really didn't share anything. I don't think my family really knows this. They know that I went to Operation Desert Storm, and they know that I was involved in tank battle. But it is. Here's another thing. When you first get out, being a man, it's kind of frowned upon to show weak. Sometimes they show help as being weak, and that's not necessarily the case. I wish I would have done this 20 years ago, but I would withhold a lot of stuff from my family in fear that I would be seen as weak. But it's very helpful now. Actually, it is a sense of relief to be able to express that to my therapist. As a matter of fact, my therapist during prolonged exposure therapy, it was a great feeling to express a lot of the fears that I had withheld for many years.
Are you still in touch with some of the other soldiers?
During my prolonged exposure therapy, it gave me the opportunity and the courage to actually get online to look at some of them. Some of the ones that I served with Operation Desert Storm, I have just recently kept in contact with. Operation Desert Storm has a 11 Cav blog or something that I have then contacted. So I'm only in contact now after 20 plus years through blog, but I have not been able to do that until just now.
Why did you think opening up about your experience could be considered weak?
Well, because there's a lot of emotion behind it. A lot of emotion behind it. I was fear of crying and feeling uncomfortable about that. But, yeah.
Would you fight in the war all over again?
No. No, I admire soldiers that go there now. I would not. I would not.
Overall, how do you think the war affected you as an individual?
I do think that it has given me a lot of insight to, you know, they say you have to learn through experience. I got to tell you, I am glad that I went through this experience because it gives you a better understanding and insight to combat. So I'm glad. I'm glad that I went through it. I don't think I know I would not want to do it again. I think I will take some of this water. Is it getting hot in here?
A little bit.
Yeah. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Yeah.
How do you think the Gulf War affected society?
Well, you know, there's still stuff that is going on there now today with ISIS and Iraq. So I don't know. I'm indifferent about that as well. It's a proud feeling to be able to liberate Kuwait, but that was, 20 plus years ago, and now they're still having problems there today. I'm glad I'm not in politics to have to deal with that now.
So you mentioned veterans in the courts. Do you believe the courts treated you fairly?
Well, you know, they didn't. It was my first offense. Everything was brought to a misdemeanor, and I was able to do my time. It was not. You know, I never used it back then as an excuse for my behavior, my aggressive behavior back then. So I think I was treated fairly. I was in the wrong. I did everything that I had to do to clear my name. Oh, but I forgot another thing was Veterans Treatment Court. Now, after they do their treatment, they have a super duper expungement where it's now expunged. So that was very nice. I had an expungement, but I didn't have whatever that is. It's $17.50 or something, where everything's actually expunged, so they don't have to put it down unless the FBI or something. They're the only ones that know. But I do think that I was treated fairly. But there was never any blame that it was combat PTSD or anything like that. It was just. Yes.
In your opinion, do we as a society do enough for our veterans?
Oh, I think so. Now that I'm experiencing this, I think that the VA takes care of those that are wounded. There is a time, because there are so many veterans that are that need help. There is, for example, I have an appeal for TBI, traumatic brain injury. That appeal process is 5 years. So if I was to criticize anything, I wish it was a little more. As a matter of fact, the VA has some heat going on right now about veterans not being able to be seen medically or something to that. But for the most part, the VA has taken care of me. I think society is very good. During Veterans Day just happened. There's a lot of wounded warriors. They're very, very helpful. There's a lot that's going on that's very supported. I do feel supported. Yeah, the Wounded Warrior Project or Foundation. Yeah, I think those are for veterans that served 2010 and after, or I'm not sure, but I served in 1990. But yeah, there's a lot of organizations out there that are helping veterans and wounded veterans. Yeah.
Are you proud of your service?
Yes, it's a proud feeling. When I was in the military, I felt very proud. Now that I'm out, it is a proud feeling to know that I did my service. It really is a proud feeling. I think I would go in again, but I think I would go in as an officer and non-combat. I think it was a great way for me to grow up and experience things.
Would you let your kids join the military if they wanted to do that?
Well, they want to join it now. I am indifferent. I would like them to go in as an officer, non-combat. Their mom is against it, but I think I'm okay with it. But I did want to say this. When I got out, I did go to college, and at that time they paid $733 in 1993 to 97 or 8. They paid all my college, everything that I wanted. They were very helpful. Yeah. So my mission to go in and go to Germany and then get college paid for, it happened.
Are there any memories or reflections from your military experience that you would like to mention that I haven't asked about?
For the most part, the military was a great way to grow up. They really did take care of my education. They do take care of me now. I could have easily went in during a period of peacetime in 3 years. I just happened to do it during Operation Desert Storm. But there was a good sense of camaraderie, teamwork. There was a very good sense of teamwork. That was you're a family, and it is a nice. It's very nice. So, if anything to take about it, it was a nice team effort. I met some good soldiers.
Do you have any advice for young people today regarding military service?
Education. If you were, well, it's easy to say it now that I'm 43, but education is very important. Military was a good way to grow up. There are risks of going into combat, but if you were to go into the military, I would definitely take advantage of the GI Bill, which pays for your education. And then if you qualify, your kids will then be able to, if you're in California, CalVet will then take care of them. The VA also has the home loan. I was able to buy my house because of the VA home loan. Many people join the military because it is a proud feeling. Like me, it's proud now, but they have great benefits that you're able to, but there is a risk. I'm indifferent. I definitely encourage it, but at the same time, there is a risk, yeah.
Is there anything you would like to add?
1-1 Cav. Scout out. Nice. Thanks for your time. Thank you for this.
Thank you for taking the time to participate in our interview.
Thank you very much.